And that proven process for us starts from when you bring in a marketing qualified lead, you convert that lead into a sale. And then that sale then goes into a project where that's where the client is being engaged and we're working on with them on a specific, service or product that we're providing them. And then that life cycle ends there, but then it repeats itself.
Hello, welcome to the show, Scalable Thinking. This is your host, Edgar Sierra, and today we have Greg Gillespie, principal and co-founder of Collectiv. Greg, good morning. How are you?
Hey, Edgar. Happy to be here. Doing great. I'm happy it's Friday. Ready to end the week on a positive note with you here today. So how are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you. And happy Friday. Looking forward for the weekend. So, Greg, why don't we start by you telling us what Collectiv is?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. So Collectiv is a strategy and consulting firm that focuses primarily within the Microsoft data stack, focusing in on products like Azure, Microsoft Fabric, Microsoft Power BI, also Databricks underneath the Azure umbrella. So in a nutshell, Collectiv helps organizations consolidate all their data into some type of a lake housing or data warehousing location underneath the Microsoft umbrella. And then we get that data ready for a couple of things. It can be for reporting, to which you might be using Power BI. We're going to get that data in basically a structured format to where Power BI can consume it, and you can utilize Power BI for some automated reporting, or we can use AI on top of that data once we have that structured in the right way. Those are really the ways that Collectiv helps organizations, and we do everything from strategy, implementation, and support. We even tap into the planning and write back world from within Microsoft Power BI. Lot of key areas that we help organizations with. We focus with organizations that are about 150 million on up, and we're industry agnostic, located in Chicago, Illinois, but we are a virtual company. So we have consultants located all across the United States, and we touch about every time zone in the US.
Greg, if you can elaborate a little bit more about who your customer is.
Yeah, so our target market is really the SMC market. So it's really about 150 million to $2 billion dollars, where we kind of find that sweet spot of organizations that we work with. However, we do work with organizations that are below 150 million, and we do work with organizations that are about above that 2 billion marker. What it really boils down to is, do you have an initiative that's focused on data? Have you committed to the Microsoft data stack or Databricks that runs within that Microsoft data stack? And have you worked with consulting firms, similar to Collectiv in the past, or do you have a desire to work with consulting firms? And that's how we really determine whether or not we're going to be basically doing business with an organization or targeting an organization. We are not industry focused. So we worked with organizations in healthcare, retail, manufacturing, construction, all the above. And we work with all different sectors inside of there. So we work with, the financial sector. We've worked with FP&A. We've worked with sales, operations, marketing. So we pretty well gathered data from all different areas inside of a business and basically all industries that are out.
Today, we want to talk about a very important topic for any company, any business, any entrepreneur, which is about customer retention. But before we deep dive into that, why don't we talk about what are the biggest challenges Collectiv has right now?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say some of the biggest challenges that we run into, one relates to finding top talent out there. So the one thing that I think sets Collectiv apart is that we hire the top talent in our industry. We don't do a lot of junior talent. We don't really hire individuals who are wanting to learn. You need to have that expertise already before you come on board, and really finding those individuals who have the talent, but also fit with us culturally. That can be sometimes difficult to find because you don't ever just want to kind of welcome anybody into your organization. They got to have the skill set, and they got to meet the culture and the core values that we're actually looking for. So I would say that's always a challenge. We've had a challenge finding them, even though we have a great team. We're still growing that team today. It's always been a little bit more difficult, but end of the day, we are using tools like AI. I know AI is a buzz term right now, but we are using ways to improve some of those things. So it doesn't take as much time for us to find those individuals and qualify them in or out. So we are using some things internally to make things a little bit more efficient when it comes to that, hiring process and finding the right people. So that's one thing. I would say some of the other struggles that we always face, on a day-to-day basis, I think it's always trying to improve and be more efficient, getting more leads in as fast as possible. Even though we're seeing great growth, I think we're always wanting to grow faster. We always have this kind of sense of urgency as something that we always instilled from day one here at Collective. So I think the faster we can do things, we're always looking for ways to improve. Because if we're not to become more efficient in everything we do, then we're kind of becoming stagnant and then irrelevant in our industry.
Greg, about customer retention, what would you say are the top 5 lessons learned you have from the experience at Collective?
I would say a very good job at retaining clients. So our sales team has really stepped up to retain those clients that they've made, that we've made initial sales with, as well as our consulting team, because that is really where that relationship lies a lot of the time. So, as a consulting firm, we'll go in, we'll do a project or we'll do some type of a training or strategy engagement with the client. And really what allows that client to stay engaged with us is the quality and value of service that we're providing them. And that really starts with the team. And it kind of ties back to what I was telling you about a little bit before with hiring is how, we always kind of have a struggle with finding the right people. But if you get the right people on your team and those people are doing a great job, they're adhering to your core values, and those core values and everything that we say we are being brought forward in, projects and things of that nature, that client is going to see that. And if the client enjoys working with your team, they're going to want to keep working with you. They may not have another project this year if you started something in January, but maybe next year they're going to have something. So in our mind, as long as we're providing high quality, we're providing our clients with high quality projects. Our team is basically interacting with the client with respect. They're adhering to our core values. We're going to find that we're going to maintain that client and customer retention much more often than not. I would say reason why we might not have a client retention if we may have had a relationship with somebody internally and then that person leaves and someone new comes in. Well, it's really up to us to rebuild that relationship, and that person may come in and have a different relationship with, another organization that does exactly what Collective does. And sometimes that's not something we can control. What we tell the team is like, you still have to do your best and still put the quality forward, put your best efforts forward to make that relationship with the client, that new stakeholder, and see what we can do to maintain a solid relationship with the client. So I don't know if that's top 5, but to me, it's all about just creating a great relationship from when you start your sales journey with the client all the way to, when you end a project that's been sold and completed with your team. So we implement something here at Collective called EOS. It's entrepreneurial operating system. And one of the key pieces with EOS is having something called a proven process. And that proven process for us starts from when you bring in a marketing qualified lead, you convert that lead into a sale. And then that sale then goes into a project where that's where the client is being engaged and we're working on with them on a specific, service or product that we're providing them. And then that life cycle ends there, but then it repeats itself. So we basically try to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that we are following that proven process in the sense of here's where you're at in our customer journey. Here's where you're going to be by the time you get to the end of the project. And we hope we can continue and make that kind of like that continuous flywheel to where we're constantly working with them. We're staying engaged, whether that's on a very large project, a small project, and basically just keeping that client engagement going and adding value to everything that we're doing for the client.
And what would you say is something that every company should start with when they want to improve the customer retention?
If you want to improve customer retention, I think you need to take a look at how high quality of a service are you providing that client? How many touch points do you have with the client? Who's actually interacting with them? Are you constantly mining for ways you can improve your service with them? For us as a consulting firm, we're always listening. We're always listening for what the client may need, where some of the problems they're having. So when you go and you have touch points with the client, you're not just saying, "Hey, what would you like us to do for you?" It's more along the lines of, "Hey, Bill and accounting was saying how we would really like to have his AR and AP reporting automated. That's something we can do because we've already brought the data into the data lakehouse. That could be a next project. What do you think about that idea? We're seeing other clients of ours doing this." So it's coming with proactive ideas to the client and listening to those little nuggets of hidden projects underneath there. Now, if the client has the budget, they're going to spend it. They don't have the budget. At least what you're doing is you're staying engaged and you're showing them that you are providing value to their organization for what your organization does, which at Collective, that is providing services within the Microsoft data stack, within Power BI and Databricks. So again, as long as you are, I think, listening, you're providing that high quality value of service to the client, and you're adhering to, I think, the core values that your organization has. That's how you get client retention. You build that relationship up and you stay engaged with the client. You gotta basically stay, what's the word I'm looking for here? You gotta stay focused with them. You gotta stay disciplined and you gotta stay on top of it. Some weeks you might not hear from them, but that doesn't mean you quit reaching out. You just have that touch base point with them every month, see how things are going. This month might not have anything there, but the next month might be. But if you're proactively coming to the client with ideas, with things that you've heard in other meetings, you're going to be more likely to retain that client than just going and talking to them and say, "Hey, what would you like us to do?" You got to proactively go after that client and offer some suggestions.
For sure. It's super important to make sure that the client is happy on what you are doing as a provider. And I think one of the best way to do this to have clear and constant communication about what you're doing, what he should be expecting.
Exactly. That proactive communication and empathetic communication. I think you got to add some empathy into there to where you're putting yourself in the client's shoes. And, you know, I think that's one thing that we do very well of is you put yourself in the client's shoes. If I was the one buying this, would I buy it? Why would I want to buy this reporting service from Greg if he's selling it to me? Why would I want to put a lake house in place? You've got to really put yourself in their shoes and believe what you're selling to the client. But also, if I'm doing the actual project myself, if somebody was doing this project for me, would I be satisfied with the work I'm providing? So it's kind of making sure you're keeping your team in check, you're keeping yourself in check, because at the end of the day, everybody's just trying to get something accomplished. You're trying to get the job done. And if you do a great job, a lot of times that's just going to keep the client coming back and be happy with you and be, coming back for more. So it's no difference to where if I hire somebody to mow my grass, right? If I hire them to mow my grass, but they're not doing a great job, and they're not coming back and checking up, they're not weeding and things like that. Chances are I'm not gonna have them come back and mow my yard. I'm gonna find somebody else that puts a little bit of extra effort in to weed eat, maybe chats with me on it every other mowing basis, lets me know, hey, we did this. This is what I'm seeing in your yard. Hey, by the way, October's coming up. We've got a leaf service. Looks like you got a lot of trees here. Would you like me to, you know, uh, rake your leaves in your yard? This one time we'll do it for free. Next time it's a 20% upcharge. So again, another example of finding those hidden nuggets that you're seeing, but you're proactively coming to the client and you're showing them that you care about them. And you're like, hey, this is a service. By all means, if you want to take it on your own, go ahead and do it. But if not, we got a team that can help you out. We're already doing a great job for you. Just trying to show if there's other ways that we can add value for what we're trying, other ways that we can add value for you or your organization. And that's well, that is a practice we do here as well. So we have account managers here at Collective, and once you become a client, you have an account manager assigned to your account, and that client may not be as inclined to share information with the project team, but what they will do is they'll share that with the account manager. So the project, to your point, may be going smoothly. We may be on track, but maybe the project team has failed to mention that to the client. Maybe the project team's not being as proactive in their communication, even though we're doing everything we need to have done. You're kind of leaving the customer on edge, not knowing where things are at. So we always give the customer that opportunity to speak with the account manager, having those touch points and say, "Hey, are you satisfied with where things are at? What are your thoughts so far?" And maybe we are doing a poor job on communication. The team's not, stepping up and communicating enough to keeping them informed as where the project is at. That gives our account manager to go behind the scenes to our team and say, "Hey, this is what I'm hearing. Can you guys make sure you step the game up a little bit and improve the quality of service so that the client is happy?" So it's a way to kind of having those touch points, from maybe not somebody directly working on it, but an account manager allows you to kind of salvage that project or salvage that relationship before it gets sour on the back end. So,
On the opposite side,
yep.
when it's time to let a client go,
When do you let a client go?
yeah,
Yeah, that's a great question. We've done that a couple times. I think it's when the client becomes disrespectful. If there's not a good match, it becomes fairly obvious. If there's obviously some type of a clash going on and you've set boundaries with that client, but they continue to cross those boundaries and they are not being respectful. If you say, "Hey, we need to follow this XYZ process for reaching out to our team," it's not fair for you to belittle the team, or it's not fair for you to, treat our team in this manner. We just, we'll give you respect, give our team respect. If these boundaries start being crossed, you got to kind of cut a client loose, and it's happened before. You don't like it happening because there's a lot of time and energy spent from both parties, both the client side and our side. Sometimes it's a fault on our side, sometimes it's a fault on the client side. But what we do is we do have core values here at Collective. And I know, sometimes people roll their eyes at core values, but as a part of EOS and as a part of that tool that we use to operate our business, those core values, we use those for everything that we do. We use them for hiring. We use them as a tool to basically assess how is everybody inside the organization basically functioning at their position. So, um, one of our core values is communicate actively and empathetically. So, if there's ever like a miss going on, or if we're seeing somebody fail from a communication standpoint, whether that's from not proactively providing project updates, maybe their people aren't getting their project timesheets in on time, maybe not having cross functional collaboration between different departments, sales and consulting, we'll use that as a tool and say, "Hey, is this actually being done? Are you doing everything that you can to communicate actively and putting yourself in the other party's shoes and saying, how would they like to have this information received? How should this actually be done?" We take a look at that. But that's how we do this internally. But we also do this for clients. And if clients aren't actually upholding to some of these core values that are key to us and not allowing us to basically operate our proven process, the only thing that does is that wears our internal team down. So if our client is being basically difficult on our team, they're not being respectful, they're not actually holding themselves to core values that we deem as basically important. We set those core values up at the beginning of our proven process that I talked about it earlier on in our call here. That proven process also calls out our core values. This is who we are. This is how we do business. And we expect this from our clients. We expect our clients to also treat us with the same, level of core values that we see as being important, because we want to work with people that are similar to us. We want to work with people that have these same core values, because if they don't have the same core values, chances are there's going to be somewhat of a clash there. And luckily, we've only had to do it a couple times here at Collective, but unfortunately, it is something you have to decide upon. And when that happens, you just like, you have a frank conversation. You say, "Hey, I think it's best that we both part ways, and hard feelings. It's just not working out for both parties." So that's kind of how we've addressed it in the past, and I'm sure we'll see it again in the future, but hopefully not as often.
and it's difficult to do it, but you always have to consider the cost of keeping that, because sometimes you can be in a situation in which the client represents a significant percentage of the revenue, but still you have to think about your team and the
Mhm.
stress that the relation might be causing.
Right.
You have to put a balance. But if you have a framework like the one you have, of course, it's going to be a little bit easier to say, well, this is how we live, this is how we work, and it's time to let go.
Yeah. Yeah, I think hopefully you don't let it get to a point to where it has a significant revenue impact on your business. Um, But I think there's always a way typically that you can salvage that relationship. Unless one party is just whether it's the client side or whether it's the collective side is not willing to budge on how they interact. So typically it can just boil down to let's have some frank conversations and put everything on the table and say like this is what we need to maintain this relationship, from a client customer expectation.
Greg, and we're getting close to the end of the podcast. Before we close, there are two other things that we would like to talk about. Now, from the company perspective, if you have a say magic wand, what would you ask for the company?
Got it. Got it. So if I had a magic wand and I could wave it over Collective and I say, here's what I would like. God, how many wishes do I get? Uh,
Only one.
okay. If I only get one wish, man. Um, I would say in the consulting world, I would like a steady stream of leads and sales, leads that convert into sales. Because in the consulting world, you have like in a lot of industries, there's a lot of, there's fluctuation of there there's fluctuation throughout the year, right? You have your peaks and troughs. What makes it easy in the consulting world is if everything stays consistent with a nice, steady growth. So if I could keep that going, that's what I'd have. But I think that's wishful thinking. That would make everything easy. That way, everybody stays fully utilized. I can easily predict how to hire. I can manage my costs. I can manage my expenses. But I think at the end of the day, that's not. It's definitely not something you can have. But if I had my choice, it would just be I'd wish for a nice steady growth that is consistent and easy to plan around.
Greg, finally, how can people contact you and know more about Collective?
Yeah. Yeah. If anyone wants to connect with me, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn all over the place. You can also go to Collective's website. You can reach out to us on there. We have some form fills on there. You can reach out to us if you're just interested in finding out more about what we can do and how we can help. Also, please follow us on LinkedIn. So we also have a page on LinkedIn, and then we also have a YouTube channel that has a wide variety of YouTube videos that shows you how to's. It gives you our insights on where the industry is at as far as data and analytics are concerned within that Microsoft and Databricks stack.
Thank you very much for being with us in the show. I think it's great when we talk about customer retention. You can never know enough about this, right? Looking forward for another conversation in the future. Have a great weekend.
Yeah. Thank you, Edgar. Thanks for having me on here and have a great weekend as well.